Hello, everybody, and welcome to Career Girl Chats. My name is Anna O, in case you did not know, and I am the founder of Career Girl Lifestyle. Our mission is to equip and empower women with the tools that they need to not just succeed, but to thrive in their careers and in life. Every Wednesday, I host Career Girl Chats where I sit down with professional women in various industries to discuss career, business, and life lessons that have molded them. Today, we will be talking with Kave Bulambo, who is the founder of My Career Path, and she is going to drop some gems on how we can set ourselves apart in the workplace. So if you are a woman that struggles with imposter syndrome, maybe you're new to an organization, and maybe you're a little introverted and you want to know how to stand out, this chat is for you. If you are not already subscribed to our YouTube channel, make sure you subscribe. Before I invite Kave into the chat, I'm going to read her bio. Kave Bulambo is a talent acquisition manager and the founder of My Career Path, a leadership and career development organization for women based in Berlin with chapters and collaborations across the world. The mission of My Career Path is to empower women and girls with the skills and knowledge that will enable them to earn a decent income and build sustainable lives for themselves. So let's join Kave to the chat. Yay!
Hi.
Finally!
It works well now.
It works. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. And you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for joining us for Career Girl Chats. I know it's afternoon over here, but good evening to you.
Thank you. Good evening and good morning. What time is it for you?
It is 12:08, so it's just turned
Okay.
the afternoon for us. Yes.
Okay. Okay.
But this is fun. This is exciting. I feel like I'm in Germany right now.
Welcome. We have good weather today, so I think probably all of this week, so you might like it.
Really? Okay. I'm gonna try to sneak a flight there. I'm gonna cut out
Okay.
of work after this.
Alrighty.
All right. So, Kave, today we are talking about the topic of setting yourself apart in the workplace. But before we get into that, can you just tell us about My Career Path and what made you start an organization that was career focused specifically for women and girls?
Thanks for the question. So I started my career path when I was myself struggling with my career, and I started thinking about it when I moved to Germany. And the struggle was between trying to enter the workforce in relation to the study that I just completed in Germany, which is public policy. To my surprise, there weren't as many jobs as available in the public policy sector. And if they were in German. And I didn't know, I wasn't that fluent in German at that time. And so what the market was offering and what I had, there was no match. And I struggled because my idea was I have a master's degree, I should be hired. I'm qualified, to have a job, but that was not the case. And so I just started writing my own journey down. And eventually, after speaking to friends, they were like, oh my goodness, this is so great. This can help somebody evolve in their career as well. Why don't you put it together and put it out there? And here we are today.
Yeah, that's always how it starts, right? First, you're thinking about yourself, and then, you're helping other people. So I love that mission. And what specifically made you want to work with other women or help young girls?
I think throughout my journey in the talent acquisition space, I've seen that women have different challenges compared to men, and I feel like it's great to actually have a program oriented to women because our challenges are very specific and require specific strategies in order for us to survive in the workplace. And plus, I come from a strong family of women who have inspired me to be who I am, and also sponsors, mentors, really surrounded by strong women. And so I've always felt compelled to support women and girls in their careers or education.
I love that. So let's get into our chat, right? Setting yourself apart in the workplace. What are some things that you want to consider before you decide that you want to get promoted or take on more responsibilities in the workplace?
There are quite a few things that you can consider, but for me and from my experience and the things that I've seen, I think the first thing is bandwidth. How much bandwidth do you have to take on this new responsibility? And do you have the skills needed to carry on the task? And how committed will you be to that?
What are some mistakes that you've noticed women keep making that prevent them from being promoted or recognized?
So I wouldn't really call them mistakes, but things that we just overlook. And one of the things is not really tracking your work and achievement, like literally writing them down so that when you go to a performance review meeting with your manager, you have it all written down and there's proof. Like show me the receipts.
Right.
Women usually don't have the receipts. And if there are no receipts, there's no track, there's no proof. You're there, but actually, we actually don't know what you've been doing all this time.
Right. I love that. So pretty much like just keeping like a notebook or
Yeah.
maybe a document on your laptop, like saying, hey, like I trained these many people,
Yeah.
I planned this event, so on and so forth. What are some strategies that you've maybe implemented or you've helped your clients to implement to get themselves recognized by superiors and decision makers? But, now that you have those achievements, how do you say, okay, I'm ready for a promotion?
Okay. So one of the things that I have to do, and all the people that I've mentored, I always tell them to do is you have to make sure that you're working on projects and activities that are moving the business forward. Otherwise, you're just working on some random project that doesn't matter in this year or in this quarter.
Right.
So make sure you speak to your manager, or when you're attending business meetings or yearly planning meetings, you clearly understand what is it that needs to be delivered by quarter, by mid-year, and by year, so that you can write down for yourself what is it, what is the one thing for you this quarter, which
Right.
should be tied to the team's one thing for the quarter, which
Mhm.
is then tied to the company's one thing for the quarter. Then you have something to show.
Right. And
And
how do you? Oh,
your result will basically be put out there as a Kave achieved, hired 10 people that we needed to actually carry us from year one to year two, and here's the proof.
yeah. And how do you ask for those projects? Because sometimes those major tasks aren't always given to you. So what does the conversation look like between, yourself and your superior in that case?
So it's not necessarily that you have to ask for them. It's necessary that you collaborate with the team, because remember, you're hired within the team.
Mhm.
And it's not necessarily important that you carry all the work, but
Right.
that you take an important part of what is the objective of the team. And so it's always to make sure that every time you're meeting with your manager, you ask them or you hear from them what is it that they've been talking about, what is it that's painful for them, and how are you clearly contributing to that every single time, and what are the solutions that you're coming up with every single time when you meet.
So for people who don't have the formal education and the formal degrees, how can they be seen as experts in their fields, especially when they have the experience, but on paper they don't have that education?
I think it really depends on context to context. Some countries value more papers, some countries value more experience. And so I would say watch first in your context what's really important. I know, for example, where I am right now, it's more about your working experience, where you've worked before, what type of products you focused on, and so on and so forth. And so what I will say is the more you do something, the better you become at it. The more I
Right.
do career coaching, the better a coach I become. And
Mhm.
so it's not really that I had a bachelor's degree in psychology that makes me a better coach. It
Mhm.
contributes to that, but it's more about how much of it I am doing every single day,
Yeah.
which makes me better.
Yes, I love that. As you know, right, we're in a pandemic. There are a lot of people working from home. which sometimes means that some people struggle with being more visible in their workplace. So, what are some approaches that you think are helpful for people who aren't physically at work and are working remotely?
Yeah, so I'm fully remote. Everybody, that I'm working with is fully remote. But this means that we have a lot of virtual time together, a
Mm-hmm.
lot of meetings on Zoom, a lot of written documentation, a lot of content that we're putting out there. So
Mm-hmm.
what I would say is it's a difficult situation right now, but
Very.
just try to also be participative in meetings and projects that are about showcasing what we're doing as a company or what you're contributing as an individual, because the more we see you on Slack, the more we know what you're doing, the
Yeah.
more everybody understands what you're working on, you know.
Yes.
Um, but in this moment, it's really a tricky situation. So I would say just do the best you can, but don't go invisible. Like, try to have those coffee chats with people, try to follow up with your manager. Everybody's tired, but just one thing you can do per week will keep you up there.
Mm. And what if you're new to the organization? Any additional tips for that?
Yeah. So when you knew, first of all, everybody's excited that you're there because you are there to cover up some work that has been, placed on hold for somebody to do it. So
Mm-hmm.
everybody is excited that you're coming to take over this project. And
Yeah.
it will be important that you get to know first, like who's on your team, who's working on what, and then start chipping it into team meetings. Of
Yeah.
course, like little by little, not like full blown on in the
Right.
beginning, but little by little, like get to know people, get to know your work, and then start showing up in meetings. Like, don't be too quiet, just like pick
Yeah.
up a little bit.
Yeah. So you're a career coach, and I'm sure you've heard this before from women where they say, well, I'm introverted. I don't know how to, start conversations. I don't really do small talk. Like, how can you be successful as an introvert in a workplace, especially when you need to stand out or you're looking for promotion?
Yeah, I know a lot of introvert people, and I've worked with many as well, but they have certain skills that also really set them apart.
Mm-hmm.
So I will capitalize on those skills instead of their social interactions ability, because at the end of the day, what matters is what you're delivering and not just how much you're talking and how much coffee you're drinking.
Right.
Of course, you have to balance it and not just stay in your shell, but really focus on that core skill that makes you stand out and say, I Kave did that. We don't hear from her, but when we ask for that report, she has it.
Right.
I
Right.
think that's the easiest thing you could
Right.
start with.
So just let your work speak for you, pretty much.
Yeah, and in the end, people will just start warming up to you and understand your personality type. I mean, we have so many types of personalities, and it's not only being an introvert, it's so many other types of personalities, and almost everybody struggles, with social interaction. And so it's always thinking that even though in this time I'm also struggling, there's also something that I am socially extrovert struggling with.
Right.
And so it's just to have that understanding.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about imposter syndrome, right? A lot of women deal with it, especially, women of color, Black women,
Mhm,
we
mhm.
deal with very heavily in the workplace. What is your advice for women who do struggle with imposter syndrome?
Just get in there with a little bit of confidence that you have
Mhm.
and just deliver. I mean,
Yeah.
it's really hard, especially if you're a woman of color, walking into a room. You're the only one. I've been in most situations. I'm the
Mhm.
only one. And
Yeah.
it has taken me time. But really, what has helped me is knowing what I'm doing, like building confidence in the work that I'm delivering. And that
Mhm.
kind of helped me because I know what I'm speaking about, what I'm talking about, and what I'm doing. The
Yes.
rest we can discuss later.
Right. I love that. Yes. And I always tell people, I've even said this on a previous Career Girl chat, like there's a reason why you are in the room, right?
Absolutely.
There's a
Yeah.
reason why you're in the room. There's a value that you offer to that
Yeah.
space. And so that is what you have to continue to remind yourself when you
Every
have those
day.
feelings. Yeah.
Every day. Every day.
Absolutely.
Hmm. And of
Um,
course, sorry, and of course, there are people who will always remind you that you're not good enough in that moment.
mhm.
And so you have to have this inner strength, that really core belief that you know why you're there and you are chosen. It's exactly what you've just said. But there will always be somebody there to remind you that you're not good enough. So
Right.
your reaction will be really, really important in how far you go.
Yes, that's where self-awareness comes in, right? Because as
Exactly.
long as you know yourself, it doesn't matter who's saying what to you. You know,
Exactly.
even compliments, sometimes you
Yeah,
can't even take those, so much to the heart because sometimes the people giving you compliments will be the first people like, critiquing you the minute you make a mistake. But as long as you
exactly.
are aware of your value, um, you're good. That's what
You're
I would.
good to go.
Well, when it comes to presentations and meetings, do you have any advice, for people who want to learn how to stand out in that element?
So with presentations and meetings, so first meetings, that don't be too quiet in meetings. And when I say this, I mean all meetings. Like if you have recurring monthly meetings, like make sure you have at least one point to contribute.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure you look at the agenda and see what's going to be discussed and prepare, beforehand. If you've done something, that relates to what's going to be discussed, make sure like everybody hears it, like,
Right.
oh yeah, that's really great that you did that. Amazing. Everybody was there. So don't only talk to your manager, in your one-on-one,
Mhm.
also talk at meetings.
Right.
When it comes to presentations, the goal is you have to deliver value. People need to hear and understand what you're talking about. Like, don't put two paragraphs on one slide. Like,
Right.
their attention span is just like this
Hmm.
much.
Yeah.
Honestly, like we don't have time to read all of that stuff. So put maybe one sentence and then explain a lot more so
Hmm.
people can hear you instead of trying to read a presentation. And remember, everything right now is online. So when you're presenting, most of the time we're looking at the screen. We're not looking at you.
Right.
So the way you will stand out right now is not the same as the way you would have stood out if you are in a room full of people.
Right.
So then your content will speak the most for you instead of yourself,
Yes.
unless that's after the presentation and people are asking questions, you
Right.
know, then you
Yeah.
just have to know your topic, be
Mhm.
concise, and speak to the point,
Yeah.
just,
Yeah, and
yeah,
definitely practice. I think
yeah,
with practice comes confidence. Because if you're going into a
exactly.
presentation and you didn't even like look at your speaking points or you have no speaking points,
Hmm.
that's when you're
Hmm.
setting yourself up for disaster.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I mean, things can happen and you can find yourself in that situation, then
Yeah.
just speak less. Don't
Yeah.
don't try to talk too
Right.
much. Speak less. And then if they ask you questions, just say, what, I'll get back to you with an answer on that. It's something that
Yeah.
I was considering, but I didn't really ponder a lot on it.
Right.
Don't say I don't know. Say I did think about it, but actually, I thought it was not important, but I can get back to you next week on this.
Right. So leadership roles, right? For women who specifically desire to be in leadership, how do they go about positioning themselves in their organization to be seen as leaders if they
Mhm.
don't already have a leadership role?
Yeah. So I've coached a lot of women, young women, who want to straight away get into leadership positions. And everybody's trajectory is different. Some people apply for leadership positions and they get them. Some people are already working in the role and the team can see, wow, Kave is amazing. She deserves to do more. She's leading people more. Let's promote her. And I think most of the time, the thing that promotes you into a leadership position is not actually what you're doing at work. It's almost things that you're actually doing outside of work that shows your leadership quality. So
Yeah.
your values, in and outside of work,
Yeah.
how you're communicating with your peers, how you're guiding them, how you're mentoring them.
Yeah.
Usually most leaders are also mentors outside. So they're not just like, I'm a leader. You can tell by the way they live their lives and the way they carry themselves. But also they're specialists, like they're thought leaders, like, they have a special opinion about what they're doing, and they have a perspective on how to approach it. And this perspective is usually mostly inclusive, for the team, but also moves the business forward.
Right.
And I think I like it more, instead of me saying, I want to be, the next VP of people at my company. I really actually want to work towards it and understand what kind of value that will bring to me, and
Right.
also what kind of value that will bring to the team and the entire company, and then pursue it.
Right. So, what are some of the steps that you want to take to start showing your superiors that you're ready for this? Most of the time, you're right; they do already recognize it. But let's say they haven't said anything, but you feel confident that you can do that role, and there's a vacant, you know, position open. How do you position yourself?
You ask for it.
Yeah,
You ask for it. And the
I
best
love that.
time to ask for it is when you're
Yeah,
having this performance review with your manager.
yeah,
And of course, there has to be an open position for it. So it can't just be random that, you want to be in this leadership
right.
position.
I
There
would say
has to
John's
be,
position.
yeah, there has to be a need for it. Like a role has been advertised. And, when you walk into a meeting with your manager, you're like, hey, I'm interested in applying for this position. And now you go back to what we talked about in the beginning, tracking your achievements and your contribution. You
Yeah,
say, based on all the reviews that we've done and the progress I've made, I feel like I'm ready for this
yeah,
role. And then they'll be like, what do you mean? Then you'll say, last quarter, we talked about how I should consider mentoring more juniors on my team, how I should consider focusing on the business values and missions and moving forward. And I did that.
yeah,
Your boss will be like, okay, I'll think about it. So don't just like go there with
yeah.
nothing to back you up, with
Right.
no role that exists. Really, there has to be
Yeah.
something. And then you start to work towards it. If then they tell you, okay, you're not ready for it, then you ask them, what is it that I need to do so that I can get there in the next 6 months? Then they
Right.
should be able to tell you, and then you work towards that.
Right. I love it. It's like you miss 100% of the shots that you don't take. That's
Exactly.
actually that's slightly how I got into HR because I was in
Mm,
a role and they were the role didn't have a formal title of HR at the time, but they were, my superiors were throwing some HR responsibilities on me. And a year afterwards, I looked at everything that I had done, like all of the trainings and job descriptions and this and this and that. And so I'm like, I think that I can be, a part of their HR management team. And so I did what you said, I set up a meeting with my superior. I composed the entire proposal.
yeah,
These are how many people I hired. These are the positions I filled. This is the retention of students that we've had. So you're right. You
yeah,
have to ask for it, but make sure that you have, you know, your numbers and your receipts, as you said.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, you gotta have the receipt. Otherwise, they'll just tell you there's no proof. We didn't see it, we didn't
Right.
record it, and therefore we cannot make a decision.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that there's not going to be bias.
Hmm.
There is going to be bias, and there is strong competition. So
Yes.
even if you want it, there is 5 more people who
Yeah.
also want the same position. And
Yeah.
so your case has to be the strongest, and you have to make sure that it sells.
Yeah. I think what worked for me in my situation, I wasn't just telling them, these are all the things that I've done, but I also positioned myself for the future. So I said, this is where we're at now, but based on the goals that we have for the company, if I were to be in this position, these are the things that I'm proposing that are in
That we could
alignment
do.
with, what we're doing or where we're trying to go in the future. So I think that's also,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The other strategy that I did was sometimes you might walk into a role, like you said, there's no title,
Hmm.
and you hear first what is it that needs to be done.
Yeah.
Then you have to tell them, based on what you're telling me, I feel like this is the job title.
Yeah.
These are the requirements. This is what needs to be done, and these are done by a director or lead
Hmm.
manager or lead designer. So really, like, tell them, like, don't wait for them to always tell you what it is
Right.
going to be.
Yeah, you
Mhm.
definitely have to take that initiative. Let's talk about LinkedIn. How can we utilize LinkedIn to position ourselves for promotion, a new job? What do we need to have on our pages to make the right connections? It within,
Mhm.
like, internally and externally as well.
Mm-hmm. So I was LinkedIn blind in the early days of my career. I think I just had the profile and I really didn't use it that much. It
Yeah,
was only when I got into HR and recruitment that I started using it a lot.
same.
And initially, I started using it for employer branding, so mostly to promote the companies I was working for, and then realized that it is also the same space that we're spending hours and hours at recruiting and searching for people.
Hmm.
Then I realized, oh, amazing. So the
Hmm.
first thing I really started was just to post, like do a blog post, but put it on LinkedIn. And this post was only related to my career and
Right.
also in the direction that I wanted to go as an individual. So I will say there's a lot of fear. A lot of people don't want to put themselves out there. They feel it's a lot of work. It's LinkedIn. It's boring.
Hmm.
But I tell you, this is where you will get most of your offers. This is
Right.
where you'll get the most of your outreach. So start small. Have a nice profile photo, please. Have a
Yes.
nice, caption in terms of what you're doing. So if you're a talent acquisition specialist, if you're a designer, if you're a teacher, put it out there in the caption. Your location should also be clear. Then you have the summary that talks about you. And before I just talked briefly about I'm a recruiter and I'm hiring people. Then
Hmm.
I realized the more you grow, the more you make it really broad about yourself, like your whole self
Right.
into one paragraph. So it
Hmm.
can be a mixture of where you are, where you want to be, and the things that you value. Really make it personal. And
I
people go
like that.
there. People message me a lot and say, wow, people first, money letter. That's really nice. And I was like, okay, great. But I
Hmm.
wasn't thinking about them when I was writing that. I was just thinking
Right.
about what matters to me. And then, of course, start listing your experiences.
Hmm.
I see a lot of people just list like their job titles and
Hmm.
then they don't bother like saying, what is it? Like, what are the functions that they're doing? I
Hmm.
mean, you don't need to put 20 functions, but at
Right.
least 4 is enough. And what's amazing here, you can actually take content from your company and put it in your LinkedIn, like videos or content that you've contributed to, put it
Right.
on your LinkedIn. It all adds value in the end and kind
Hmm.
of give me a sense of where you are, what are you interested in, and what are you doing as an individual.
Right. And how
Mhm.
do you, because I've heard a lot of people say recently for LinkedIn, you want to take that same approach. Like you want to take that initiative to be the first person to reach out to recruiters. So what are some of the do's and don'ts in that scenario when you're reaching out to recruiters for a role that you desire?
Mm. So I'm sitting on the opposite side where I'm reaching to
Yeah.
people every day.
Hmm.
People who don't want to talk to me, they already have jobs, they're not interested, in my work. But maybe we could just flip it. So
Hmm.
when I present myself or the company I'm working with, I really put it in the way that speaks to your profile.
Right.
So if I picked up that sentence, people first, money later, and I will be like, hey, Kave, we're hiring for a recruitment manager, and our values, which we see can align with your value of putting people first,
Hmm.
feels like a match to us.
Hmm.
Kind of like really find the correlation.
Right.
So for you as somebody who's looking for work, you really have to figure out what roles I'm hiring for if I'm a
Hmm.
recruiter.
Right.
So if I'm focusing on technical roles and you're messaging me about marketing, it's highly likely that I don't know about,
Right.
what's going on there. I'm probably not hiring for it, so I'm not going to be very useful.
Mm-hmm.
And probably I have 100 other messages waiting for me.
Mm-hmm.
So
So
be
pretty much
relevant.
just do your research.
Yeah, and be relevant and figure out. And you actually don't have to just message the recruiter. You can also message other people who work at the company in the department that you're interested in and say, hey, I'd love to know more about your company. If you have 5 or 10 minutes to catch up, that would be really nice.
Right.
You just
Yeah.
try your luck that way, because
Right.
then referrals are considered highly
Mm-hmm.
actually than you trying to ping a recruiter.
Mm-hmm.
So if an employee sends me a message and say, I have Anna who messaged me, can you please look at our profile? I'll go running. Okay,
Yeah.
fine. Let me get your referral in first.
How can women sign up for career counseling and leadership development with your organization?
So we have all our coaching programs online. You can definitely go online and book the coaching right now as we speak and start going through the content already directly. And within the content, there are sections where I come in as a coach, where you can actually directly schedule me as well to have a call after you've submitted some assignments. So I'll say go on the website, choose what you want to develop in and involve in, and just get going, really. I think it's really, really important to invest in our careers, and it goes a long way. It goes a long way.
It definitely does. And what's the domain? What's your website domain? www.
www.mycareer-path.com.
Well, I have some mystery questions here. So these are some
Okay.
questions that I didn't put on the list that I sent to you. They're nothing crazy. So these
Okay.
are
Woo.
just to help me and the audience learn more about you. They're fun
Okay.
questions, I promise. I'm gonna choose
Okay.
3 questions at random.
Okay.
All right. Let's see. I always get the same questions for every guest. I'm hoping I get different ones from you.
Okay.
Oh,
Fingers
this is
crossed.
actually a great question. I've never got this
Okay.
one before. So, what is something about your career that you don't enjoy?
It's demanding.
Mm,
It's demanding, and there's a lot of pressure that everybody I speak to needs to get the job
yeah.
or need to know exactly what they should be doing.
Yeah.
And I always felt like if the person doesn't get the job or doesn't figure out what they need to do, I failed in my
Yes.
work. And so I think that's really hard. It's a huge responsibility.
Biggest mistake you've made at work?
In the early days of my career,
Mm-hmm.
I really struggled to be a team player. And that's because I just thought, it's okay to be an independent contributor on team. It doesn't really matter what everybody thinks,
Mm-hmm.
but actually it matters.
Yeah.
Everybody's going to give feedback on you, and that feedback matters in how far you're going to go within the company or within the team. And so it took me a bit of time to become like a team player, know my strengths and other people's strengths and how we can collaborate. So now I'm better.
Yes, that's a good one. All right, last question. Do you prefer in person or virtual work, and why?
I think a mixture of both is really good. I think working from home can be a bit distracting
Mm-hmm.
with your kitchen there, like your bedroom upstairs and your
Mm-hmm.
veranda, outside. You can
Mm-hmm.
just be in the mode where you're transitioning between being at home and being at work. It
Yes.
works for a while, but I don't think it's sustainable. I think we should have a mixture of both where we
Yeah.
can actually go out and actually collaborate with others. But I think there should be a new way in which we see workspaces. Like
Yeah.
when we go there, we actually go for collaboration and not be in our corner the
Mhm.
way things used to be before.
Yeah, I agree. I'm all for a hybrid work week. Thank you so much, Kave. Let's stay connected. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
You
And
too.
such a pleasure speaking to you. Bye,
Thank you
everybody.
so much. Bye. Take care.
Thank you.